news! The tank is back on! Welcome to From Center Ice. My name is Courtney. I apologize for taking a personal week off last week, but now I am back and I am here to recap the game that was between the Chicago Blackhawks and the New York Islanders last night in Chicago. But before I jump into talking about the goals that were scored, I do want to just quickly recap the games that happened to finish out the month of October. So since my last video talking about the game against the Seattle Kraken, the Blackhawks finished out their opening month with a record of 1-1-2 in the final week. It started with a 4-2 victory over the Florida Panthers of all teams, one of the best teams in the league. Look, I'm not here to say this Blackhawks team makes any sense. All I'm here to say is that we are having fun in the process. And speaking of fun, the very next game after that was the 6-5 loss to the Edmonton Oilers. And while losing is never really a fun thing, that game was absolutely wild. Hardly any of the game was played at even strength. The Blackhawks had 10 power plays, which they only scored on 2 of, so that wasn't great. And the Oilers had 7 power plays, and they scored on 3 of them, which isn't necessarily a great thing for the Blackhawks, but it does say that their penalty kill was doing a pretty good job because that is a power play that has Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on it. So if they go 3 for 7, that means you killed 4, meaning you killed more penalties than you allowed a goal on. I'll take that as a win. I mean, Connor McDavid did have a hat trick in that game, but that's kind of just what he does. On the Hawks side, Patrick Kane had a 3-point night with a goal and 2 assists, so that is good as well. Moving on from that insanity, the game after was an overtime loss to the Buffalo Sabres, Arvid Söderblom seeing his first NHL action of the season. He played very well in that game, way better than a 4-3 overtime loss would suggest. Of course, in my opinion, he's not ready for the NHL yet. He does still need more time in the American Hockey League, but he can't exactly be there at the moment due to goaltending injuries. So even if he's not picking up wins, seeing him playing well and playing confident in the crease and coming up with some massive saves is a win. We could even call it a tank win. Maybe not so much that Buffalo game because the Blackhawks did still get a point out of it, but they didn't get the second point, and their very promising goaltender of the future perhaps played well. That's a tank win. And then they closed out the month of October with another 4-3 loss, this one coming in the shootout against the Minnesota Wild. And Kirill Kaprizov scored an absolutely filthy goal on Alex Stalock. That's just to be expected. Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews did not score on Marc-Andre Fleury in said shootout, so that pretty much signals that the Hawks were going to lose it, since that's how it seems to go. When those two don't score in the shootout, they typically lose. So that's unfortunate they didn't win that one, because again, they went to overtime and they did get a point out of it, and as we said a few games ago, if they go to overtime, they have to win, because then at least you are happy about the win. But if you still lose, but you still get a point in the standings, then nobody wins. But it was only the first month of the season, so we will let it slide, them picking up a few spare points here and there while not getting the wins. Just don't make a habit out of it, okay? Either win in overtime or lose in regulation. None of these 1-point games. You never know if that could be the difference between you getting Connor Bedard or not getting Connor Bedard. And for anybody who doesn't follow draft prospects, it's not the end of the world if the Blackhawks don't get the #1 overall pick. There are a lot of promising players at the front half of this draft, and it's a very loaded draft overall. But Connor Bedard in a Blackhawks sweater would be pretty sweet. Anyway, over the whole month of October, the Blackhawks had a record of 4-3-2. If you recall back to last season, and if you don't want to do that, I don't blame you, because most of us don't want to recall last season. But it took until November for the Blackhawks to get their first win, so at least the first month of a potentially poor season was a little more fun than last year. That's a tank win? As long as the tank works, then yes. Tank Nation aside for a minute, it was a very successful first month for Luke Richardson as the brand new head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm sure I am not alone here in being able to see the difference that he has already made in just training camp, preseason, and the first month of the regular season. None of us are going to be able to predict how long it's going to be before the Blackhawks are successful in competing in the playoffs again, but it seems like things, at least things higher than just at the player level, are trending in the right direction with the head coach and Kyle Davidson as the GM of this team. Both of them have done a very good job so far, so I don't like to say it so soon, but I do have my faith in them, and I do believe in them, and we just have to see how it plays out. This could all come back to bite me, and I know it, so you might as well just mark this video now since I said that, so you can clip this and throw it back in my face if things go horribly wrong. But can we please just really hope that things don't go horribly wrong? Cool. Now that we are all on the same page here, the Chicago Blackhawks kicked off the month of November with a game against the New York Islanders. It's the first time this season that the Hawks are meeting up with the Islanders, and coming into the game, the team from New York had a record of 5-4-0, and they were on a bit of a winning streak. Meanwhile, Chicago, like I said, had a record of 4-3-2, and they were not on a winning streak. In fact, they were on a losing streak of 3 games, but 2 of those did go to extra time, which normally would be good if you are in a normal season and trying to compete, and at least picking up points if you lose. But again, not really what we're looking for here. Anywho, I put up a poll on the community tab for this very channel. If you have not checked that out yet, I do post updates from time to time. Sometimes I ask for y'all's opinions if I'm trying to rework some videos or podcasts, so definitely make sure you check out the community tab. But I did put up a poll asking about these game recap videos, if you like longer ones talking about the full game flow of the game, how it went, or if you like quicker videos that are at the most 15 minutes just going over the goals and the major moments of the game. 80% of you like shorter videos, so that is what we are going to do, just going over the goals that were scored, the big moments. Then I have some thoughts about the game. Shorter videos work for you guys, shorter videos work for me because the editing process does not take as long. I can get them out quicker, so winning all around. Especially if, like last night, the Blackhawks lose. That's another tank win. Maybe I should have put spoiler alert before that, but I'm sure that if you are watching a video about hockey, you are getting at least the score updates, if not watching the game yourself. So let's jump into the goals that were scored last night between the Blackhawks and the Islanders. Just kidding, because before we can even talk about a goal being scored, we have to talk about one of the goaltenders, that being Alex Stalock of the Chicago Blackhawks. Because 2 minutes and 56 seconds into the game, before a goal was scored on either side, Casey Cizikas of the New York Islanders was driving to the net. He got off the shot and Alex Stalock made the save, but after shooting the puck, Cizikas never changed his course. So instead of, missing Stalock and avoiding the goaltender as you are supposed to do, he just went barreling into Alex Stalock's head. The net goes flying off. Alex Stalock is laying face down on the ice. Thankfully, he wasn't knocked out. He was moving, but he did grab his head, and that is something you hate to see with a goaltender or any player, and he is down for a good amount of time. Thankfully, he is able to skate off under his own power, but he immediately goes back to the room, which thankfully he did, because sometimes you see goaltenders getting absolutely dinged in the head, and then they just stay in the game, as you can see them trying to shake the cobwebs out of their brain. Isn't each arena supposed to have a concussion spotter? I feel like sometimes they just don't do their job very well, but But this time, Stalock did go back to the room. He did not return to the game. He is in concussion protocol. That is the last update that we got from head coach Luke Richardson, so I'm just hoping that Stalock is okay. He is able to make a full and fast recovery and return soon. For the Islanders, Casey Cizikas got a 5-minute major and a game misconduct, so he was booted from the game. And today we learned he was fined $5,000, which is the maximum allowable under the CBA for that kind of hit. So the Islanders lost Cizikas, the Blackhawks lost their goaltender, one in way more unfortunate fashion. It was a bogus hit. There was no need for Cizikas to keep driving directly towards Stalock and directly into his head. It was not a good look from any of the replays from any different angle that you can find. And perhaps the most frustrating thing behind the hit is nobody on the team for the Hawks did anything about it. I know, some people hate fighting in the game of hockey, but it's there for a reason. And I'm not saying that somebody should have grabbed Cizikas and blindsided him and knocked him out on the ice and concussed him like Stalock got concussed. But at least go grab him. If you're not gonna fight, you're not gonna fight, and that's fine, but they just skated away. What kind of message does that send? Hey, yeah, go run over our goaltender, take him out of the game, and you're just gonna skate away. Thankfully, this time the officials handed out the punishment and kicked Cizikas from the game, but we all know that does not always happen. It was just frustrating to see. You can't have players running your goaltender like that and then have absolutely no response for it. Or how about this? If you're not going to fight, you're not going to grab the guy and, scream in his face a little bit. Remember how I said that he got a 5-minute major? That means the Blackhawks were on the power play for 5 minutes. A typical minor penalty being 2 minutes, and if the team on the power play scores, that means it is over. Then you can have a 4-minute double minor. You usually just see that with high sticking if blood is drawn. If the team on the power play scores within the first 2 minutes, then it goes down to just a 2-minute power play. So it's like you wiped off the first power play and now you are just on to the second. If you don't score in the first 2 minutes, but you do score in the final 2 minutes, it doesn't keep going, the power play is just over. But with a 5-minute major, the team on the power play can score as many times as they can. Well, this is the Blackhawks we're talking about here, friends. And while they have looked better-ish on the power play so far in the first month of this season, they did not get back at the Islanders by scoring a single goal on the power play. So their goaltender was knocked out. Nobody decided to grab Cizikas to tell him that they weren't very happy with his actions, and then they had a very lifeless 5-minute power play, so the game remained scoreless after that. But 17 minutes and 35 seconds into the first period, the Islanders are on the power play. Kyle Palmieri has the puck on the right wing. He takes a shot toward Arvid Söderblom. He makes the stop. Yes, because Arvid Söderblom had to come into this game and did finish the game, but after making the stop, the puck bounced out of his glove and lay in front of him. Brock Nelson got a touch on it to poke it through Arvid Söderblom, and as the puck was sitting behind him, Anders Lee, the captain of the New York Islanders, put the puck into the net. 1-0 Islanders. And I have the NHL app pulled up on my phone just so I can get the timing of these goals correctly. And if you've never looked at the scoring summary on the NHL app, it tells you who scored, it tells you the time that it was scored, what that made the score of the game. So it says 1-0 New York Islanders on here, then it gives you the time, then it tells you what kind of shot they took. So if it was a wrist shot, a snapshot, a deflection, a slap shot, and for this one, it just says poke. And obviously that isn't the first time that they've had to use that on here, but that's the first time I've seen it or noticed it, and that just made me laugh as I looked down there. What kind of shot did Anders Lee take? A poke! Gotta laugh through the pain so we don't cry. But that is how the first period ended, with the Islanders having the 1-0 goal advantage. They also had an 11-5 shot advantage leading that as well. On to the second period. And neither team scored a goal, so we went into the second intermission with the New York Islanders still having that 1-0 lead, and they also still held the shot advantage, but now it was 19-14. So the Hawks did get some more shots in that period, 9 as opposed to 5 in the first, but none of them went through Ilya Sorokin, which isn't surprising because he is an extremely good goaltender. But anyway, on to the third period. 7 minutes and 23 seconds into the third period, the Blackhawks have some offensive zone time, but they cannot get the puck once again through Ilya Sorokin. Ross Johnston of the New York Islanders is able to get the puck on the boards and poke it out to the neutral zone where Brock Nelson picks it up. And if anybody's going to grab a loose puck, that is not the guy you want doing that. He rushes into the offensive zone down the right wing, only one defender in Caleb Jones is back. There was nothing he could do as Nelson took a wrist shot. Let me just check this on the NHL app real quick. Correct, he took a wrist shot, not a poke, from the right face-off dot and just beat Arvid Söderblom over the glove. From one of the angles, it looked like maybe it touched a piece of Söderblom's glove, but he just didn't get enough of it. From other angles, it looks like he just whiffed on it and missed. Either way, it was 2-0 Islanders. And I saw a lot of people saying that Söderblom has to save that. That's one he's going to want back. And yeah, perhaps he did have a clear view of Brock Nelson and it did just go right over his glove. But we're gonna give the kid a pass here. He wasn't supposed to start last night, and while goaltenders have to be ready, he's also just not supposed to be in the NHL right now, and Brock Nelson is a very good player. Would it have been nice if Arvid had that? Yes, of course, because it would have only been 1-0 then. But he didn't. You live and you learn and you move on. A few minutes later, 10 minutes and 19 seconds into the third period, the Blackhawks have another power play. And this time they look a bit more lively. They're actually getting some puck movement. You have Max Domi and Taylor Radish playing a little bit of catch as Domi is at the left half wall and Taylor Radish is below the goal line. Then Max Domi gets the puck up to the point where Caleb Jones is waiting for it. He passes it over to Patrick Kane at the right half wall. Of course, Patrick Kane looks over his options for just a second before passing it back to Caleb Jones. Caleb settles down the puck, takes a wrist shot towards Sorokin, and Jonathan Toews, the captain of your Chicago Blackhawks, parked in the center of the slot. He gets that stick out, deflects it, the puck goes in past Sorokin. The Blackhawks are on the board, only trailing 2-1. On the power play! Doesn't necessarily make up for doing nothing on the 5-minute one, but any time that the Chicago team can score a power play goal, it feels like a victory, because they're not always very good at that. And it's the captain's 6th goal of the season through 10 games. Jonathan Toews has been notoriously a slow starter to begin seasons, but he came into this year and he said he wanted to make the most of this year as the Blackhawks captain, should it be his last. We hope that it's not, but we understand if it is. But he's looked great, and he gets his team on the board once again in this one on the power play. Assists from Patrick Kane and Caleb Jones. And the game remained 2-1. I wish. With 13.3 seconds left in the game, the Blackhawks with the net empty. Zach Parise sends it down the ice from his own zone. It hits the back of the empty net, and so did Philip Kurashev. He was trying to hustle back to keep the puck from going in the back of the net, but he didn't, and he also ended up in the back of the net, and he crashed into it pretty hard. I hope he is okay. I believe he is, because we haven't heard anything otherwise. But that made the score 3-1 in favor of the New York Islanders, and that is how the game ended. And the Islanders pulled a little bit more away in the shot total. It ended up 33-22 in favor of New York. Power plays were dead even-ish. Both teams scored on one of their power plays, but of course Chicago had the 5-minute major that they failed to capitalize on. When it comes to hits, the Blackhawks are keeping up this momentum of out-hitting their opponent, this time 25-20. I'm still not used to that. When it comes to blocked shots, shots, the Blackhawks also led in that statistic, 17-13, helping their goaltender out a little bit. And at the faceoff dot, the Chicago Blackhawks won that battle, winning 53% of their faceoffs. So it wasn't a total loss on the night for Chicago. Again, a tank win. It was kind of a lifeless effort, especially in the very beginning of the game. Even before Stalock got barreled into. And of course, that was only 3 minutes into the game. Sometimes it takes a few minutes for a team to get into it. And while it really would have been nice to see them capitalize on that power play, having that happen so early in the game while you're still trying to get into the flow of the action, then seeing Alex Stalock just being run into, having to leave the game, that couldn't have done well for them mentally. It may have taken them out of the game a little bit, shaken them up. So I don't necessarily blame them, but they have to be able to get themselves back into the game. But they didn't. They lost to the Islanders. That's a win for the tank. And getting Toews on the board again on the power play, getting Kane another point, Caleb Jones doing well at the point on the power play. Those are all good things. And then we have the goaltending stats. So I'll start with Ilya Sorokin. He stopped 21 of 22. That was good for a .955 save percentage. Again, he is just a very, very good young goaltender for the Islanders. And then for Chicago, Arvid Söderblom had a pretty good night himself. He stopped 28 of 30 shots. Alex Stalock stopped 2 before he left the game. And then the 33rd shot of the game for the Islanders, of course, hitting the empty net. No goaltender there. But saving 28 out of 30 gave Arvid a .933 save percentage on the night. And that is very good. Say what you want about that second goal going over his glove, whether he needed to have it, whether he wants that one back, but ending the night with a .933 save percentage is pretty good, especially for a guy who wasn't supposed to play. And I know last year the Islanders had a hell of a time scoring goals, so I went to the NHL stats page today to check out where they stood. I also looked up the Blackhawks, and when it comes to goals for per game, the Blackhawks are currently 13th in the league with 3.20 goals for per game. These stats coming after last night. So that's really not too bad, especially seeing as how they absolutely couldn't score last season. And that was when they had Alex DeBrincat. But when it comes to the Islanders, and I was surprised to see this, they are currently sitting 6th in the league with 3.60 goals for per game. So they really aren't as dead offensively as they were last year and as I thought coming into this game. So Söderblom only allowing 2 goals, of course they get the 3rd on the empty net. I will take that, especially after he had some rough outings his first year last year seeing NHL action, and a lot of people were very down on him because of it. And just for funsies, I also looked up goals against per game. Chicago is currently sitting 20th in the league. They are allowing 3.30 goals against per game. And when you're only scoring 3.2, well, that means that you are allowing more goals than you are scoring, and that is why they are losing games. There are a lot of complicated things about hockey, but what it really boils down to is if you score more than you give up, you win. If you give up more goals than you score, you lose. As for the Islanders, they are currently sitting 5th in the NHL, allowing only 2.50 goals per game. So should we be shocked by this outcome? No. But injuries are beginning to hit the Blackhawks very hard. Of course, Mrazek has been out with a groin strain for a little bit now, and he seems like maybe he's getting closer to returning, but now Alex Stalock is out in concussion protocol. That makes Arvid Söderblom the starting goaltender for your Chicago Blackhawks. This morning, the Blackhawks signed Dylan Wells to a 2-way contract to back up Söderblom. He was with the Ice Hogs on an AHL contract, so he gets a bit of a pay bump while he is up in the NHL. One wholesome thing about Dylan Wells, if you go search his name on Twitter, you'll see some clips from the beat writers interviewing him this morning, and he was absolutely all smiles. All of the reporters were saying that he just could not stop smiling while he was talking to them, so he was excited to get this opportunity. He won't be up here long, hopefully, and I say hopefully not because of him, but just hoping that we can get both Mrazek and Stalock back soon so we can send Arvid back to Rockford so the IceHawks can have their starting goaltender. It is almost like I've been saying this since we knew who our goaltending tandem was, that the Blackhawks should have gone out and gotten a third veteran goaltender to sit behind those two guys because they are often injured, and if one of them, or now both of them, were to get injured, Söderblom would have to come up. That leaves Rockford without their starting goaltender. Jackson Stauber, who was backing up Arvid Söderblom, got injured in a game over the weekend when a puck hit him directly in the face and got lodged in his mask. So they had Dylan Wells playing, but then he has to get called up. So then they called up Weeks from the ECHL, Indy Fuel, and they signed a goaltender to a PTO this morning. Will somebody just, for once, listen to me about goaltenders? I'm like Mrazek over here instead of Nostradamus. I said before the season was even over last year that, hey, the Blackhawks should go get Peter Mrazek from the Toronto Maple Leafs because they need somebody to play in net and the Leafs need to shed that salary. Sure enough, what happens at the draft? The Blackhawks go get Peter Mrazek from the Leafs without them retaining any money. They get a first-round pick in the process. And then when I learned who our goaltending tandem was, I said, oh no, these guys get injured. Maybe the Blackhawks should go pick up a third goaltender. And what happened less than a month into the season? Peter Mrazek has a groin injury again, and here we are. Anyway, it is not just the goaltenders. Remember how I said Caleb Jones was manning the point on the power play when Toews scored? Well, his brother Seth Jones is on IR now with a right thumb injury from blocking a shot against the Buffalo Sabres. And Tyler Johnson was put on IR as well with a right ankle sprain that he suffered against the Florida Panthers. We did get Boris Tkachuk back from being injured, so at least somebody came back while all of these other guys are going out. And Tkachuk has looked pretty good since he has come back, so that's promising as well. But let's just go forward hoping for health for this team. And it especially sucks for Tyler Johnson because he missed most of last year with the injury, and then he had the back or neck surgery, the same that Jack Eichel had. He came into this year feeling a load better, and he was playing some great hockey. And then he gets a right ankle sprain, which he should be able to bounce back from pretty easily, but it does take some of the momentum out of his game, and it's just really sad for him. But the other guys just have to keep going in the meantime, and that's all being led by the captain, Jonathan Toews. Again, 6 goals on the season so far through 10 games. He has a 6-game point streak going. The captain is leading by example. And now, since we are through the first month of the year, I will give you the top 5 point scorers for this Blackhawks team. Number 1, he started off a little slow, but Patrick Kane. He has 2 goals and 8 assists for 10 points through 10 games. Number 2, the captain, Jonathan Toews, with 6 goals and 2 assists for 8 points through 10 games. Number 3, Max Domi. He's got 4 goals and 3 assists for 7 points through 10 games, and that line between him, Kane, and Andreas Athanasiou is starting to gel a bit more. Athanasiou has been getting a lot of scoring chances these past few games, so that's something to keep an eye on. Number 4, we have the short-handed king, Sam Lafferty. Through 10 games, he has 3 goals and 4 assists for 7 points. And last but not least, in slot number 5, we have Taylor Radish. Through 10 games, he has 3 goals and 3 assists for 6 points. And now your new starting goaltender for the Chicago Blackhawks, Arvid Söderblom. He's played 2 games this season. He's got a record of 0-1-1, but he is rocking a .920 save percentage. So that's also something to keep an eye on. But the Blackhawks' next opponent is the Los Angeles Kings. They play tomorrow night. The Kings are coming into the game with a 6-6-0 record. I'm not sure which goaltender they're going to roll with, so I have stats for both of them. First, of course, being Jonathan Quick. He's played 8 games this year with a record of 3-4-0, and Jonathan Quick has an .888 save percentage. Then you have Cal Peterson, who has played 5 games this year, and he has a record of 3-2-0. So he has the winning record, while by all accounts Quick has played better, but he has played 3 more games. And Cal Peterson has an .868 save percentage, so not great. But for their top 3 scorers, number 1 we have Gabriel Velarde. He has 8 goals and 5 assists for 13 points through 12 games, and that has been very good for me because I picked him up on my fantasy team. I also just picked up Brock Nelson yesterday morning before the game, and then he got couple points last night against the Blackhawks. So I'm not saying to bet on Gabe Velarde scoring tomorrow night, but I'm not saying don't do that also. Anyway, number 2, their big acquisition over the offseason, Kevin Fiala. He has 3 goals and 10 assists for 13 points through 12 games. And number 3, their captain, Andrei Kopitar. He has 2 goals and 8 assists for 10 points through 12 games. It's always interesting when these two teams meet up. Not many players are left on the Blackhawks side from when they were meeting up in the playoffs. In fact, there are only 2 guys left, but it's still always an interesting game, usually a fun one, so tune into that tomorrow night. But that's going to be all from me in this video. If you would like to hear more from me or from Center Ice, you can head on over to FromCenterIce.com. There's links to all of the places you can find us over there, including our brand new merch shop. That's just FromCenterIce.shop, but there is a link on the website. There's also a link in the show notes. I try to make it easy for y'all to find everything. If you are more of a social media person, you can also find links to all of those platforms down in the description. Go ahead, give us a follow. And if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, go ahead and do that. Give this video a like because that would make me so very happy. But all of that being said, thank you all so very much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. Let's get ready for tomorrow night's game, and I will catch y'all in the next video. Bye, guys.